Hello, and welcome to the Battleship Brawl Companion. I'm Evil for Zergan, and in this episode I'll be reviewing the Zero Effort Meta Breaker by Kazuou. This is another one of the most heavily armed ships we've seen so far in this tournament, rivaled only by the ship it fought in its first battle, the Funky Good Time. Naturally, it was one of the shortest and bloodiest matches of the entire tournament so far. But let's start with the stuff that doesn't matter as much. We see that it's making a speed of about 13 meters per second, which is quite a bit better than one would expect from a ship of this shape. To me, it looks kind of like a motel with a bunch of mortars strapped on top. Although, I do have to admit, the individual mortars are pretty cute. Now, you'll notice these razor formations on the front of the ship. This used to be a good strategy for reducing the drag, but since recent rule changes, it doesn't really work so well anymore. If I go into drag view mode here, you'll see that only the bottom row of slopes is experiencing the lower drag from being a slope. The upper ones are experiencing huge drag because the block just below the slope here is occupied. Now there is a trick to get the drag bonus without using too much space, which is to make kind of a slope staircase. So if I move the slopes here and place each one forward of the last, we see that the blocks turn green, meaning they have their lower drag. And we're probably getting like 0.1 meters per second from replacing that column. Looks really weird, maybe it'll be patched out later, but this is one way of getting lower drag without using up too much space. So, if the drag characteristic is not so great, where's all the speed coming from? Well, it's no big surprise there's a lot of propellers. A lot of huge propellers at that. As the saying goes, in thrust, we trust. Gonna replace the downslopes back to their original configuration. Alright, and let's check out the turn rate. I've whipped up a little Lua script here. Does a exponential moving average over half a second. So let's put this into a hard turn. So we see it's making just under 6 degrees per second. Pretty average for a turn rate, but probably more than expected considering the shape of this ship. So we've got a healthy number of rudders scattered around, I think including some upside down rudders in the front. Let's talk about protection. This ship basically doesn't have any. It's made out of one layer of wood. It does have repair bots, though, given its fragility and its major firepower, the repair bots probably aren't going to have a great deal of time to do their work. Now, these wooden shells may be able to stop one explosion, assuming the shell is contact fused. If I'm reading the rules correctly, the source code correctly, the The check to see whether a subconstruct is affected happens before damage is dealt. So, the first shell may simply destroy the wood outer shell without affecting the turret itself. Of course, the second shell will blow up the turret, but I mean, that's life when you only have a single layer of wood for armor. At least there's a pretty good degree of redundancy. We've got several scattered engines underneath. The ship has 3 AIs. So it's not like one lucky hit is likely to take out the entire ship. Although with wood being as weak as it is, there is some risk of entire chunks of the ship being disconnected if a lot of large HE shells hit close to each other. Let me maneuver a bit here. Okay, finally the interesting part, the weapons. We've got 26 of these guns. That's a huge number. Let me demonstrate for you them firing. You can even see the kind of ship layout reflected in the shell spread. Let's look at the guns themselves. Got 1991 millimeters. That's close to the cap. A okay amount of pellets. 38.5 explosive, 3.5 hardening, and also a decent amount of boxes, 12 boxes. So, while not super powerful per shell, they are pretty powerful. The internals are pretty well constructed. We've got a diameter of 5 with the most important explosive pellets accommodating 3 autoloaders each. So these are overall quite well designed turrets. The barrel is very short. How many are there? There's a firing piece, 1, 2, 3, 4. So just 4 meters of barrels each. The accuracy is actually not terrible since large gauge crams have inherently decent accuracy, but certainly less than would have been gotten with a longer barrel. The major feature of this short barrel is the relatively low muzzle velocity of just 134 meters per second. I think this was probably intentional. With so many turrets mounted so close together, a low muzzle velocity will help the turrets fire over each other, getting a nice arc out of them. But at the same time, a low muzzle velocity is going to make it difficult to hit targets at long range. Since with a lot of the velocity going to getting the arc and the low velocity overall, it's going to take some extra seconds to reach their target, which the enemy may be able to use to get out of the way. But with 26 of these, anything that happens to get in the way is going to get utterly annihilated. While this wasn't quite enough to save this ship in the first round, it got really close. A few seconds later, and it would have tied the second match in the second battle, and the match would have gone on to a third round. With some luck, this ship could have some success in the secondary bracket. Perhaps it can annihilate some ships in just a few volleys. Best of luck to Kazuou, and I'll see you next time.